Tom Hiddleston, star and executive producer of Loki. I want to start with an upcoming anniversary because May 4th is the 10th anniversary of the Avengers. And obviously, you played Loki in Thor prior to that, but Avengers, different beast, Bat of New York, genesis of Loki the series. So, how does it feel 10 years on to still be playing this beloved character, but in such a new and richer way?
I suddenly feel very old. Basically, I can't believe 10 years has gone by so fast, and I hadn't thought of it until you mentioned it. And amazed, surprised, and delighted that I'm still playing the character. I have loved playing this character in every iteration. It's the Loki seems to contain so much breadth and depth, so many surprises for me, for the audience. It's such an honor to have played him for the length of time that I had. Loki's an ancient character, been around a long time, will be around a lot longer than me. So yeah, feels great.
Mhm. I loved Loki's arc in the MCU Sacred Timeline, but I've thought about this a lot, and I think I prefer his arc on the show.
Oh,
And I think it's because you guys have accomplished so much in the first season, because identity has always been such a huge part of his story.
yeah.
But on the show, in the first episode, he watches his life play out. He realizes he's not unique. He has no control over his life, and then he's this narcissist who meets a version of himself who he finds annoying. So he learns like he's annoying. But then by the end of the season, he learns to care for other people like Sylvie and Mobius. So I was wondering, as an EP and having played his character for so long, like what kind of discussions did you have with Michael Waldron and Kate Herron about where to take Loki by the end of season one?
Joyce, I honestly couldn't have put it better myself. You've really laid it out in the most articulate and eloquent way. Thank you. Because it is, all the things you've said were absolutely the heart of our intentions. I found it very exciting, and I was very engaged with the idea of breaking Loki open, confronting him with his past, confronting him with what could be construed as his future, and the patterns of behavior which have been destructive to others and destructive to himself. And that allowing for a kind of vulnerability and a curiosity which we hadn't seen before. Any questions around identity I've always found interesting. How we define ourselves to ourselves, the context of the stories we tell about ourselves to other people in order to find meaning in the world. And in so many ways, the series was about integrating the disparate fragments of the many selves that Loki is. I think that's a really universal experience. I think, all human beings have to integrate the versions of many different, we're constantly having to integrate the fragments of who we are into a whole. And make sense of that. And so the idea of doing that with Loki just seemed a thrilling prospect, because he's the archetypal trickster, the transgressor, the boundary crosser, the shapeshifter, somebody so expert at changing shape. And so the question we had in our minds was, who is he really? Who is Loki? What makes Loki Loki? And the great conceit of the TVA is that putting Loki inside this institution strips him of everything that's familiar. Thor, Odin, Asgard, his magical power, his clothing. And by taking everything away, Loki is challenged to reveal something about what remains, or we were challenged to find what remains of Loki. And and what the new journey is. So it was it was a wonderful idea, and I think Kate and Michael. Kate had the most wonderful take on it when I met her for the first time. Within 5 minutes, I think I asked her, "What do you think the series is about?" And she said, "I think it's about acceptance and permission and love." And I thought, she understood, gets it, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, because by the end of the first season, he gets there, and Sylvie doesn't, because Sylvie is kind of like Loki in Thor, the first film, which has anger and vengeance.
Yes, she's in a way she's blinded by grievance and anger, but I think Loki, through his own experience in the Time Theatre with Mobius, but also his experience of his friendship with Mobius and this unlikely character who seems to care about him and for whom he cares as well. And also by confronting the absurd and destabilizing context of episode 5, where he meets classic Loki, boastful Loki, kid Loki, alligator Loki, President Loki. It's as Richard E. Grant's character says, we're animals. We lie and we cheat and we cut the throats of those we love, and there's this sort of, they all starting to understand that it's time to change the tune.
And he, classic Loki, gets there because he self-sacrifices.
He gets there, yeah.
You guys, yeah. So.
It's redefining glorious purpose. I mean, you mentioned the first Avengers movie, and that's where that line comes from. And one of the first things I remember saying in the movie was to Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, "I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose." And there's a self-righteousness, an arrogance, a hubris to that. This grandiosity of being burdened with glorious purpose. And the series reveals to Loki the fraudulence of that, the meaningless of it, the meaninglessness.
He has no glorious purpose.
He has no glorious purpose. And if he wants purpose, he has to find a new purpose. And that might come from a place of caring for others and generosity of spirit, and acting less from a place of grievance and more from a place of love.
For sure. And well, he, like you said, like he always thinks he's the smartest person in the room as well. And I love his dynamic with Mobius, because he can match him, like in wit and like verbal volleys. I love all their scenes together. And Mobius is also supposed to know Loki better than he knows himself. And I know you held Loki's school for Owen Wilson and basically everyone involved in the show to get them up to speed on Loki. So what was in the syllabus for Loki school? And did we have tests? Like, who passed? Was it pass fail? Did you give out grades?
Oh, I wish there were. Sadly, there were no tests, or no, perhaps happily there were no tests or exams. Or there was no pens and paper, textbooks. There was no syllabus. It was just. It was interesting. It was born out of. I can now say, because the series is released, but clearly the whole center of the show was what makes Loki Loki, and it was going to be explored in variants. And of course, there's the very confronting examination that Mobius puts Loki through in episode 1, challenging him on the sort of repetitive cycle of his behavior that's always about kind of self-advancement and betrayal. But then introducing variants and Sylvie and this whole idea of what's the world of Loki, and lots of heads of departments, wardrobe, stunts, cinematography, they were all asking me, like, what's the Loki? What would Loki do here? What's the Loki thing? How much green? How much gold? Let's talk about horns. Let's talk about magical power. And I ended up thinking, why don't I just get everyone in a room? And I said to Kate, should we just like assemble everybody for an afternoon and I'll try and do a little presentation. It was, it's now become
You were Professor Loki.
I was Professor
Yeah,
Loki for,
there you
yeah,
go.
for a
That's in
day.
season 2. That's another variant. We'll see.
We're not the first to have said it, actually.
Yeah.
But it was great in a way because it allowed people. I presented people with the shape of the MCU, and how I had built the character, from Kenneth Branagh's film all the way through to Infinity War and Endgame, directed by Joe and Anthony Russo. Through Alan Taylor and Taika Waititi and their takes on the character. And it was talking about the things that I found interesting, talking about his contradictory qualities, that there is a kind of theatricality, a flair, a playfulness, a wit, a very kind of charismatic external carapace, but behind which is a very vulnerable, very damaged, very broken, very lonely, and very poignant, I think, wounded soul. And that's a kind of cocktail which if you were to shake it up, it's just a really interesting thing to do. And it happens even talking to the stunt department about trying to make the choreography have a playfulness and a wit to it, or talking to remembering conversations I had with Chris Hemsworth about their different fighting styles, that Thor was like a block of granite, kind of ancient and powerful, and Loki was like the wind, dancing around this this element, but they worked together, and it allowed everybody to ask their own kinds of questions, and people asked really interesting questions actually about. Sophia had some great questions about what would be different about Sylvie, and she kept pointing out that Loki was a prince, and that he was born in this royal family, or brought up at least in this royal family with enormous privileges, and of course felt marginalized and somehow isolated. But Sylvie didn't have any of that. She didn't grow up in a palace, and she didn't grow up with Frigga, played by Rene Russo, as her adoptive mother. So all kinds of things that were different. And then Owen's great question, when I was talking to him about it, was he was really drawn to the first film. Actually, he loved the sincerity of Kenneth Branagh's film, and after we'd sort of watched a few clips and talked about the movies, and he said, "But Tom, what do you love about Loki?" And I said, it was such a great question. He said, you played this character a long time. What do you love about it? And I said, I think it's because the character has so much range. He can play the light keys on the keyboard of a piano. He can play the light keys, wit and charm and mischief and playfulness. But he can also play the heavy keys about grief and loss and vulnerability, and he was like, I like that. I think I might use that. And then he used it in the show. He improvised it one time.
That's
so
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
Loki, something came out of Loki school at least.
he got it.
Yeah.
Well, lastly, I would love to get your thoughts on the Thor Love and Thunder trailer.
It looks epic. Yeah, I mean, it looks I'm really excited to see it. I loved it.
My friend said it was going to be weird to watch a Thor movie without Loki, but you're excited to just watch it as a fan.
Do you know, I don't know if Loki, and at this point I've learnt to live in the question. So, you never know. Loki might pop up in there.
Actor Loki, Matt Damon.
Loki is Loki has range. Loki can be Matt Damon. He can be Richard E. Grant. He can be
Alligator Loki. Yeah,
exactly. It could be alligator Loki. So yeah, I've got. I wouldn't. I'm not placing any bets. I'll say that, but it does look fantastic, and I don't fully understand how the story construction of how Natalie Portman ends up with she's worthy, of course. We all knew Natalie was always worthy, but how she ends up with Mjolnir, I can't wait to find out, because I know it's inspired by the comics in some regard, but yeah, can't wait. Cannot wait.
Well, we'll both be there. Yeah, like opening day.
And, I mean, I can't think who else is in it. People like coming back. Taika's obviously back. Org. Yeah, can't wait. We haven't got long to wait, right? A couple of months and it's out.
July 8th. So
Okay.
we'll be there. First one's in. So
yeah.
Well, Tom, it was great speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time, and can't wait for season 2. Congratulations.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you very much. We will be working around the clock.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.